Sam used to have severe language problems. We look at a speech and language centre to find out how pupils like Sam return to mainstream. Every year, scores of pupils apply for 20 places in Carden Primary School's Speech and Language Centre in Brighton.
Good listening, good looking, good sitting, and good talking, Jay. That's right. Now, really, really important.
2 classes for Key Stages 1 and 2 run in parallel to the mainstream school.
Today, I'm going to ask one of you, no hands up, no shouting out, thinking.
Each class has a specialist teacher and speech therapist.
What's the date today? Monday.
The key issue for the pupils within the centre is that they have a significant speech and language impairment. That is to say that their language development there's a huge discrepancy between the development of their language and their chronological age and perhaps other areas of their development. So the aim really is to provide strategies to help them overcome these difficulties.
And can you put your pointy finger on the number line?
This is a group of mixed year, so year 1 and year 2, with mixed difficulties. Some have got semantic and pragmatic difficulties, some have got dyspraxic difficulties, and some have got huge comprehension difficulties, word finding and building concepts.
The centre uses Makaton signing from British Sign Language and Makaton symbols.
We have a very visual approach because the children, it's very hard for them to learn using language, which is basically here or orally. So we use a visual approach, and there's very strands to that. We use signing, and in fact the actual movements, that's the motoric bit, that helps them also remember, because they can actually, they're making a motion which for them may or may not be difficult. For some it is, but for a lot it's not. And so that sort of mapped onto the visual helps them remember the word. It's much, much easier. Also, when they look at us signing, it's a visual support to what we're saying.
Now, let's have a quick look at our timetable. Register's finished. Assembly is finished.
The visual timetable is another really important strategy, because the children too, again, the children who have got difficulties with social interaction, change is often a really big thing for them. So they need to know when the lesson is finished, or when a part of the lesson has finished.
And we've finished that, finished counting, and now we're going to look at the board and we're going to look at our learning objective today.
So often a hidden problem that the children just look like they haven't got a difficulty, and so therefore it's all the issues around the comprehension, the breaking down of instructions, the supporting. Perhaps the child can remember the word that they want to say in their head, but they have difficulty actually retrieving it, getting it out, and that's where the support of the sign language comes into play. And without that, a lot of them would struggle to have the understanding of the concepts that were within the lesson.
Asba, can you help Abanob? Can you bring me Numicom to make number 12?
The Numicom is an invaluable resource for helping the children to understand the magnitude of numbers. So they have a picture in their head. It's a really useful strategy that they take on board for areas right across the curriculum.
We've got the 110 and 2 more makes number, what is it? 12. Number 12. Show me the sign. 12. Beautiful. Then you've got 5. Then next comes 6. Then next comes stop and think. No, you're not thinking. Stop and think. 5.
Abanob has extremely slow processing skills. He has a tendency just to jump in and say the first thing that comes into his head. And now we have just used a simple strategy with the use of the sign, stop and think, and he just takes so much longer to process the language in his brain. He's really starting to realise, well, I can do this.
Next.
11.
No, stop and think.
5.
No, you're not thinking, Abinor. What about the sugar, Mike?
Yeah.
Mike thinks the sugar.
In Key Stage 2, speech therapist Jenny Barrett teaches science to a group of years 4, 5 and 6.
Right. I think you're doing some good guesses here. What we call predictions, yes? Good guessing.
Yes.
We have what we call a core vocabulary. Tease out what is the most important words to be able to be accessing that part of the curriculum. And we actually teach them those words. Like today it was separate, okay. We can't just teach them separate, they would not understand. So it's what do we take out, take things out, that's called separating. Trina, what's happened to the sugar?
It went through.
It went through. It has to be very visual in the sense that it's experiential. So they have to see what's happening, they have to do it. Now I know children in mainstream do it as well, but we actually break it down into smaller steps than probably they would do in mainstream. The other thing that we do is we do lots and lots of repetition, lots of going back, lots of going over what we've learned, because these children have got to hear these words at least 20 times more, if not more than that, if we're going to get them into their head. Can we sign separate? Separate, really good.
Separate.
Right. Reese, can you clap it for me again? Can you say it and clap it?
Separate.
As well as teasing out the specific words that we want, we then think about what we've taught them previously and we link the vocabulary so that they've got something to hang it on to. And as I said, we separate it out into these files for them, into these groups, which is how we learn language. Think of babies, everything initially with a beard is daddy. I mean, whether it's the milkman, embarrassing it can be, or, whether it's uncle or whatever, it's all man. And then gradually they start to link the more complicated words like uncle and dad and brother and so on. They link that to this whole concept of man. So what we do is we start with the big, broad, easy concepts, and then gradually we build onto those the more complex words. If we don't do that, it's like having one big dictionary in your head, but no way of dividing up those words. You can't retrieve them. Come on then, find the group it goes in for me, please. So this is why we're doing all this work about groups as well. But we're actually enabling them to put these words into different files in their head. Don't tell me, just have a think in your head. Sword. Wow. I think I'm going to have to ask you what group that belongs to. Michael really takes a long time, long pauses. And again, he's learning how to sort things out. And he knows where they go now. He knows that these are groups, but can't always remember the names of the groups.
No.
I don't wonder if it begins, Mike, with a w. With a w. It's a we.
Weapon.
Jen, you shout it out. Mike, did you know that one? It's kind of in your head, was it, but you couldn't remember it? We have specific games that we play to improve memory. Their auditory memory, in other words, the way in which they learn through listening, may not be very good, but the strengths are in other ways. Gemma, can you remember what a syllable is?
No.
Who can help? It's the number of claps in a word. Good girl. Because all of them, without exception, find it difficult to remember what you say. Now, if you think of that in the class context, teachers giving various instructions, and they might remember the first bit, and they might remember the last bit, and they forget the rest in between. What's the first sound in that word? Is it a b? Is it a sh? Is it a k?
And guess what? My kill's got my uncle's got a cow, and guess what? Because he lives in
He might live on a
farm. He lives on a farm, yeah.
Acute articulation is very systematic and is based on very sound phonological theory. Phonological being related to the nature of how sounds are made. What's the first sound in the word? Okay. What's the first sound in the word? Cat.
Cat.
Good girl. Can you cue that for me? No, not. Can you do it correctly, please? It's a quiet sound, isn't it? Not only can you mark the place where you make the sound, you can actually show what kind of a sound it is. So if it's a little short, sharp sound, what we call a plosive in the business, it's a little explosive sound, and you can then do it. The movement shows it's a little short sound, so p and b, okay, k and g. They're little short, sharp movements which go to with the little short, sharp sounds. And if it's a long one, s or f, okay, it's marked in that way. And once the children have learnt it, it's like you've turned the light on. It's just amazing.
The centre is working towards full-time inclusion for the children, so it's important that they join their mainstream classes for assembly, PE and music to feel part of the school and boost their confidence.
It's very crucial that children also, even within the centre and that small group, that they are encouraged to work independently, that they are encouraged to apply the skills that they're learning in preparation for returning to a mainstream class. That is the aim of the centre.
Sam spent 2 years in the centre before joining mainstream education full-time over a year ago. He's now in year 3.
Sam, have you been thinking of one?
That is an enormous house.
That is fantastic. Well done, both of you.
Sam still has some support and regular assessment from a speech therapist.
Sam's ability to kind of describe words, which is really important. If he can't find the word he wants to use, he can say, oh, but you cut with it and it's made out of metal.
His parents have been involved in his progress
Sam
since
is
he
really,
came to
really
the
good
school
at
at
thinking
3
about
years
words
old.
now, why they go together.
Sorting it out with Sam has been so crucial in the early years.
He hasn't quite got...
When he first came here, his vocabulary was really quite restricted. He would just have individual words. There was no linkage, no putting words together, certainly no sentences. He had his own vocabulary sometimes as well. Like, for example, a window he called a didi, and tomatoes were tamazamat, things like that.
Sam's parents even learnt to do Makaton signing.
My husband and I, we went to the course that was run for parents and for supporters of the school, in which we could learn all the symbols, mainly to be able to use it as a game with Sam. We didn't use it as a tool for him understanding. It was like a backup. And Sam would say to us, Mummy and Daddy, what's this? And he would do the symbol to us. And it was like a game, you know, a quiz.
Only one.
The home-school relationship is very, very important. And if you don't do the stuff at home, you can't rely on, especially with a special needs child, you can't rely on the teachers just to sort out the problem for you.
I like going to school, and I like my teacher, Miss Irwin.
He's really good, and we are really, really proud of him, and he knows that we're proud of him as well. And he has this little smile, he knows when we're pleased with him.
Thank you.